Hello, Yakri here with another Dominions 5 video. This time we're going to talk about late age Ulm because the oldest request I can find for a national video was for late age Ulm, late age Katis, or early age Lanka. And I haven't done a late age nation yet, so I thought I would talk about one. And during my playtest before the video, I actually found out some interesting new things about this nation, so I've had a pretty good time doing this. So let's look at their, how do I want to start this overview? Okay, so Ulm's general theme is that they get very prolific mages with weak magical paths and strong units. This continues into the late age, but in the late age, Ulm is now a blood nation. Their sacred priests are far less useful than they were in earlier eras, and their most prominent feature is probably recruit anywhere mages, aka foreign recruit mages. So you can build a lab on any province and recruit mages, right, without building a fort on it. Okay, so that's really handy. I think the other most notable feature are the Ulmish Rangers, or the Rangers of Ulm. These guys, I mean, I just kind of imagine them like Rangers of Gondor from Lord of the Rings, although they're not quite that elite, obviously. They are basically really badass crossbowmen for a premium price, with a moderate amount of armor on, and they're stealthy. They also have higher than usual precision, and better weapons than usual. So the really nice thing about these guys is primarily just that they're good crossbowmen, right? Precision 12, 11 damage crossbows, and 12 hit points, right? Even with weak protection, it means that they'll win a lot of archer duels. And they're stealthy, which is extremely powerful. It means you can raid enemy provinces, sneaking into enemy territory and fighting their province defense to take out their province temporarily and deny them gold is just very good strategy in general. The other nice thing about these guys is that they have axes, right? Like 19 damage axes. These are really good melee weapons. Now, these units will mostly be shit on in melee combat because they only have defense skill 8, and they're not wearing thick armor, so they're going to get killed in 1 or 2 hits. But the remaining units that haven't been attacked yet will be able to kill a lot of enemy units in like 1 hit. So when they actually get into melee, at least versus crappier infantry, like for example indies when you're expanding, they do okay. So you can kind of expand with these guys, and the particularly nice thing about it is that when you're finished expanding, if you have a bunch of Rangers of Ulm left over, you're not, excuse me, you're not too sad about it because they're very good units and you want to recruit a lot of them anyway. Now, out of the rest of your troop line, let's see, most of these guys are useful, probably with the exception of your most elite units. Your Black Templars, your Sacreds, are basically garbage. I hate to say that. These guys are very cool, but they didn't get, I think they got discounted by like 5 gold or 10 gold, but they needed to be discounted a lot more, like coming from Dominions 4 to 5. Cavalry in Dominions are generally overpriced, except for the very cheapest cavalry in the game, like Wolf Riders for Middle Jotun, and the cheapest cavalry on Bogers and Tianchi. Except for those guys, pretty much cavalry are really overcosted, right? Like, don't pay more than 20 gold for any cavalry. There are some rare exceptions, I guess, like the Recruit Anywhere Sacreds from Middle Marignan. I would say they technically don't have as good stats as these guys, but because they're only 45 gold, and they still get like 3 attacks, I believe, they're much better than these units, effectively. Like, there's kind of this issue with, like, especially capital only recruit sacreds like these guys are, where if you just don't get enough humongous value for the units, it's not worth taking a bless, right? Like, these guys only have 15 hit points despite their high protection. Like, only having 15 hit points is a huge problem, because if they get hit with something that negates armor, or they fight units that can just deal like a 30 damage hit, right, occasionally, they're or like even just crossbows, right? Crossbows turn this armor into something that they can punch through like 40% of the time. So they get hit by crossbows twice, or 2 or 3 times, and now they're dead, and you lost 65 gold, and your opponent probably spent like 8 gold killing this unit, right? It's really not a good trade-off. You're still gonna get some value out of it, but it's not enough. Like, there are units that are like 115 gold that are probably 10 times better than this unit, right? That's the issue, right? The other nations get. So they're garbage, right? You can't recruit them. They're not that good. Whereas like some of your other units are actually pretty good. Like Pikeneers also. These guys are generally like, you know, cheap crap infantry, but they have the longest length of weapons possible. Now I haven't done a tutorial covering repel mechanics and other combat things. I probably should, but how this works basically is that, you know, if your weapon is longer than the enemy's weapon, they have to make a morale check, kind of like with awe, but not quite as great, to hit you, right? Or they'll be pushed back and dealt like 1 damage. And that's really handy. Basically, it lets you avoid damage, and other units in the same square as your defending unit can also repel. So squares of these guys, or like 3 of these guys together, are pretty good, and they're actually pretty high damage. Like for a piercing weapon, 18 damage is pretty good. Pikes are very good weapons in general compared to like spears, and they still have 14 protection. And their stats aren't super good. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong guys. Their stats still aren't very good overall, but like it's decent frontline infantry, better than what many nations get. Halberdiers are kind of a situational unit, right? Kind of the same deal as the Pikeneers, except they deal a lot more damage, and it's piercing slashing. So I think it's random which one it decides it is for a particular attack. The nice thing about this is slashing damage deals increased damage after protection value or something, and it can like chop off limbs and stuff. So versus lightly armored units with a lot of hit points, slashing weapons are very good, like very, very good. So if you're fighting late age giants or like people who have summoned like really like fat high HP units, these guys are good. They're good versus thugs as well because of the high hits will like cripple people and deal afflictions, because you can cut off limbs in dominions on a high damage roll. Let's see, greatsword guys. These guys are kind of nifty, right? So they're 14 gold, so they're pretty elite, but they only cost 36 resources, only being in like air quotes, right? But these guys cost 68, right, for a similar level of awesomeness, actually. 21 protection and basically killing things in 1 hit with 22 slashing damage is just kind of handy, right? I wouldn't use them all the time, but they're really good versus certain things. The key thing is that a lot of players will be coming at you with crossbows, and these guys are not super good value versus crossbows. You'd rather have Pikeneers, because either one of them is going to take damage pretty often from crossbows, but at least with Pikeneers, they cost you 4 less gold when they die, pretty much. But you have a better tool to deal with crossbows than that. So before I get into that, let's just recap this unit line. So basically, you've got these guys are actually one of your better units to deal with crossbows because they have tower shields. Tower shields are really great. They block a lot of crap. I believe, don't quote me on this, I guess, but I believe tower shields are particularly effective against projectiles. I want to say there's like a special tower shield interaction. And even if there's not, shields are good versus arrows, and tower shields are good shields. So these are kind of good defensive units, right? They can take a lot of arrow fire, they hold up in melee combat for a decent while, and they do okay damage, right? They're just kind of middle of the road, and they're still cheap. So you have like 3 different flavors of cheap middle of the road, not middle of the road, but cheap, infantry of like moderate efficiency, because they don't cost too many resources, but they cost enough resources that you're like not blowing a ton of gold on units that will instantly die, or that don't have any offense. And then you've got your Rangers of Ulm, which are very good crossbowmen, right? You'll be happy to recruit hundreds of these guys. And then you've got like these elite units. Oh, I forgot the Ghoul Guardians almost. These guys are niche, right? They're maybe worth recruiting, maybe, versus thugs and certain super elite sacreds like Zedaeans. If you don't know what those guys are, those are the sacreds of late age Raga. They're brutal. Because their weapons have a special Bane of Heresy sacred stun effect, right? And they're super elite units, but mostly it's a crap deal because they're undead, and that's mostly a disadvantage. And they don't have they have 16 hit points, but they don't have like a ton of hit points. They don't have like over 20 hit points, like 22 hit points or something for this price. And ultimately they're gonna take a couple regular units with them and then die. And I think they're only they're cap only, so don't bother, basically. Similar with these guys, they're it's not like they're bad per se, it's that they're not worth their gold value. I probably can't find a use for these guys either. Yeah. Okay, so let's talk about your, so that's your troop line. You have good units, but let's talk about your commanders for a minute here. So you've got your ranger captain, that's just to lead your stealthy troops. You've got your actually good leadership guy. You want to use this guy for your expansion forces mostly, especially with the changes to how leadership works. So you can put your troops in a line. Black acolytes, I don't think there's any reason to ever recruit this unit ever. So ignore it. Because, yeah, anyway, we'll get to the other unit in a minute. So, illuminated ones, these are your cheap research mages. You can also use them as spies. This means you've basically got much better scouting than most nations because you can recruit these guys anywhere. These are like your quality mages, right? The other mages are kind of fodder, and there's a lot of uses for those cheaper mages, like research. You can use them as communion slaves, something I probably need to make a whole tutorial series on. You can buff them up to make them more useful in combat. These guys, however, are, like, to begin with, actually decent in combat. They are better at research, of course, not more efficient, but if you want to get more research more faster, these are your mage of choice, and they can blood hunt, which is very important because Ulm is a blood nation, although they're a bit of an unusual one. These guys are black priests. Okay, they're actually useful. Unlike their lesser counterparts. These guys give you your diversity magic pathing, which is really shitty. Like, you may have noticed something here, especially if you've looked at some other nations. These guys, two in a mage path. That's the highest you are going to get. Like, maybe you get a 10% and they have 3 astral. Like, whoa. But these guys, you might get 2 earth, right? But you are not getting a whole lot of magic pathing. This forge bonus is not going to earn you very much because you can't forge a whole lot of items with these guys because they don't have much magic pathing. Nonetheless, their Inquisitor bonus, right? Very efficient when preaching against other faiths. Priest levels doubled for this purpose. You will use them for that probably because you're going to want to take a low Dominion score to get more points for other things. And you can do it unusually safely and easily because you have Black Priests. These guys are very interesting, and something has changed in Dominions 5 with regards to Wolfords. Now, if you played Dominions 4 and tried out this nation, you noticed you could recruit these guys. Now, they're cap only, and you can only recruit 1 per turn. But over a long period of time, eventually you get a ton of Wolfords, and these guys can summon wolves every turn. I believe they get 1 each per turn. And so, these dudes are great because although you do pay upkeep on this unit, it's only a 50 gold unit. It's relatively cheap. I guess I can't click into gold in this screen. So it's fairly cheap. And it doesn't cost you, so it doesn't cost you that much upkeep. It doesn't cost you that much to recruit to begin with. And you can summon wolves every turn. And the wolves cost no upkeep. You can use them to patrol. You can use them as cannon fodder, right? And when you're getting, it's not very good initially, but if you get like 50 of these guys in your capital, right? Which is something you can realistically do, and you might actually would want, it's something you would want to do. You can start having armies of like 300 wolves, which, you know, doesn't sound that great because wolves are very crappy. They die very easily. Regular troops can kill like half a dozen of them. However, the thing is that when you've got like 300 of them and you put like a wall of archers and mages behind it, it's actually pretty effective. And the enemy mages are going to waste spells killing these wolves, right? And that means they're going to run out of they're going to fatigue out eventually and stop being useful. So that's what you want these guys for. It's actually a very powerful ability to have as a nation, like just to get that free spawn. Don't underestimate it. Ghoul commanders, you need them to lead your ghoul guard if you get guardians, if you get any, because your ghoul guardians are undead and your other units don't have normal undead leadership. Hotchmeisters, just ignore them. They're not worth messing with. Like, if you want to just have some fun, you could try and turn them into thugs just for the lulz. But they're not very good at that. Just so you know. It's not a good idea, it's just a funny idea. These guys are fortune tellers cap only? I think they are. Yeah. So these are your other mages that you're going to be recruiting besides your, whatchamacallits, priests from your capital. You want to recruit them because they can get astral plus these 3 paths, right? Blood, actually, no, that's not useful. Death and nature, that's what you want them for. You want death and nature fortune tellers. You want a couple each of death and nature, but it doesn't matter too much that you have a ton of each, right? You just need a few. And the reason for that is going to be communions, which again I'm going to talk about a little later, and I really should do a whole tutorial series on it because communions are pretty complicated. But that's why you're going to recruit these guys, is so that you get that path diversity and you can do some special stuff with it. Okay, so I think we can go into pretender creation now. So Ohm has a particular requirement that you don't see, or I guess you get a hint at it on the nation screen if you read that closely, which is that they can summon vampire counts, right? So their nobility in lore are vampires now. So what that means is that you get vampire units, and you can summon them without doing any research. They cost 44 blood slaves, and you get an immortal, I think it's Death 3 mage, like Death 3 something else, it's like blood magic. I think it's Death Blood, right? I think they can summon themselves once you get the first one. The thing is that you can't naturally get access to these units, and they are very good units, right? They're immortal. I believe they are now regular immortal, not Dominion immortal, which means that you can just kind of throw them around with impunity, and as long as you summon them initially in your capital, preferably, and you don't lose your capital, you can have them run around with impunity, dying and respawning and not giving a fuck, right? Anywhere on the map, and they can fly. So they're very dangerous, and since they're immortal, you can slowly build up more and more of them and use and abuse them willy-nilly without any real repercussions. So for that, though, you need Death 3, Blood 3, I think. Or it might be slightly less, like Death 2, Blood 3. I forget, but you're probably going to want more than the base requirements anyway once you're investing in those scales. So this leaves you with a bit of a problem, which is that you'd like to have an Awake Expansion Pretender, but there's no really effective way to get an Awake Expansion Pretender, get 2 different magic paths of at least 3, and still have decent points for scales, especially when those 2 magic paths are Death and Blood. Like, if we look, let's see, the pretenders that we can probably expand with here are like Man-Eater, Earth Blood, Earth Serpent, just Earth, Dragon, Nature, Water, Fire, Death. Actually, I'm not sure we can expand with the Raven or Dog with the Underworld, not without pretty deep pathing that we can't afford. Nature, Earth. Yeah, like theoretically, if we weren't a nation that needed good scales, maybe we could do it. Like, I bet we could go Death 7, Earth 6, Blood 4, and expand with the Master Lich, right? For sure, we could do that, but we would have no scales points to actually produce troops, right? And you want very positive scales. So what I've decided on is the Vampire Queen. Now, for some alternatives, actually, maybe I should showcase an alternative, because I think it might be an easier way to go. So, let's see. You don't care about your Bless, like, at all. You only care about magic pathing for what items you can craft, right? And the reason for that is because Freak Lord might actually be good. You just start with Blood. The reason for that is that you aren't going to have any sacred units besides like a couple priests and your pretender. You're going to get like 0 value out of it, okay? No matter what it is, it's just going to be completely wasted. So, let's see. I think I would recommend a Mage Pretender, probably. I like the idea of the Master Lich or Vampire Queen. I guess I'll show you what I would do on them, and then maybe I'll pick someone else who's going to be a little bit more beginner-friendly, actually. So I might do something like this, right? Now, in particular of note, these scales here are super optional, right? So Earth 2 and Astral 2 is going to let me build Earth Boots and Starshine Skullcaps, as well as, I forget what they're called, but these miscellaneous items that give you an astral bonus that require Earth and Astral magic. It's also going to let my Vampire Queen participate as a Communion Master in my Communions, right? Which, I guess I've been bringing it up a lot without really telling you what it is. So, Communions boost the pathing of the Communion Master by 1 in every path that they have access to, based on the amount of Communion slaves you get. And it's, I believe the correct terminology is geometric scaling. So, at 2 Communion slaves, you get +1 to everything. 4 Communion slaves, additional +1 to everything. 8 Communion slaves, an additional +1 to everything. See where I'm going here? So it doubles each time. So having just like 4 communion slaves is very good. You also distribute fatigue among all your communion slaves when you cast spells. So the communion master can not only cast spells of a much higher caliber, but it costs them less fatigue to do so, and eventually it kills all their communion slaves. Okay, so you can also do this with blood. You can become a Sabbath master, and that works with communion master. They're interchangeable, so you don't actually need astral per se to do it. But it is easier because you don't have to haul blood slaves around. A lot easier, and potentially they can be killed and stuff, so shrug. But anyway, this pathing lets me do a lot of fun things because I can easily get, with a couple items, I can easily have her boosted up to like, you know, Earth 5, Astral 5 or 6, Death 5 or 6, Blood 5 or 6, when tossing out endgame magic, right? Possibly even higher. In a communion, and as Ulm in particular, having even 8 communion slaves is not totally unreasonable, which can give you like 6+ in every path when combined with items, and that's very powerful. There's a lot of good stuff you can do with this pathing. Now, to make it a little easier on yourself, you can also just take off those 2 scales, and we can just have like 4 and 4. These blesses are mostly Unis, but Unis? What? Maybe I should speak more slowly. Mostly useless. However, we'll take Undying and Blood Surge, which will be useful on the Vampire Queen herself if you're getting her into combat in your own dominion. And we'll set her to Dormant because you actually don't need your Pretender until about when Dormant Pretenders wake up. So we need like every form of good scale here, except for Luck, probably. Okay, so this is probably what I would do now. In the past, magic scales have been very essential for Ulm. I would still say that they're good, right? Not essential, but good. They're very good, even. How to put it? They're very good, but you don't absolutely have to have them because you can't recruit as many foreign recruit mages anymore. Now they're all effectively slow to recruit, so you get one every other turn. This encourages you to recruit more of your big mages, or slightly bigger mages. Which means that you're going to get less benefit out of magic scales. They're still definitely a good idea, but I'm not 100% convinced that going Heat 3 is worth the magic to get more magic scales is worth it. And it's definitely not worth it to lose out on any production growth or order. You need all of them very badly. Maybe... Let's see, you can't actually get another point by going down to Dominion Candle 4, and you probably would like to have more magic pathing than this, honestly. Like, if I was to go to Heat 3, I'd probably use it to go, like, something like this as a build, right? So 1 magic, 4 Dominion, bit tough to deal with, but totally doable, and 5 and 5, right? And then we would add Strong Vitae and Undying. I'm pronouncing that poorly. Well, whatever. So... this is actually a pretty decent build, if you don't like money as much. And I did that whole talk about heat scale, so this isn't so bad. It's unfortunate that you're a neutral preference nation, but hey, what you gonna do? You could also as easily go cold. I think I might do that. Yeah, I might do cold, actually, because you don't have a lot of undead, but you have some, and they don't like fire spells, and you're not gonna really be casting a lot of fire spells, so why not, right? Okay, so I think I will, though, go down to Cold 1. We'll back this off and go like this. So this is I think a little bit more beginner friendly. But I think in a multiplayer game I might have to do a couple of playtests and see which I prefer more. I think either way is pretty fine. Whether it may depend a little bit on what you want more, right? Do you want to have more ability to recruit a lot of mages and have a bigger army by slightly improving your income, or do you want to slightly improve your research and hit research goals more quickly? Kind of depends. I think I might go for the group of people I play with. I might go for the magic research just because I'd expect them to try and kill me a little earlier, right? Oh, and I didn't show off another god example. Any of the mage pretenders are valid choices, right? And what I would do is I would not get the astral magic because potentially you could get magic dueled at some point. Probably you shouldn't be taking your pretender into combat anyway if that's a risk and they're on a mage body. But I'd probably just pick up much the same pathing. Possibly throw in some air magic or what would I put in? I put in like Fire 2, Air 4, Nature 4, possibly something like that. Get more pathing. You should be able to afford it on a cheaper mage pretender, and do the scales pretty much the same, and pretty much the same on the Dominion score as well. Now, why those particular pathings? If I remember correctly, elemental staves can be forged with air and earth 4, so you should be aiming for that. You have like earth 3, then you build earth boots. Then fire would be because of some blood spells that require fire to summon Hell Knights and stuff. So you do that, and you'd have the blood magic, and probably you would want to go and get this spell Twiceborn and Death Magic that allows your pretender to, if they die, they'll respawn as an undead. And then that'll make any of the mage pretenders slightly more powerful, and let you avoid death once. Okay, so let's get into the game now. I think that's the Twiceborn thing. I think on almost any nation, like any strategy, I think picking up Twiceborn if you can is good. As Ulm in particular, you're going to be going, I believe it's an enchantment, and you're going to be going up enchantment anyway, so you'll be in a good position to pick that up as general protection against your pretender becoming diseased or anything like that. So yeah, just bear in mind that you only care about casting your national spell, and I'll double check what the requirements on that are once I get in game, and you care about magic diversity, right? What value you can get out of it, mostly by crafting items and by your pretender casting big combat magic and site searching. So if you did go mage pretender instead of the vampire queen or master lich, and master lich I believe is going to be a little bit harder to do because he's more expensive. If you did do that, you're going to get less combat value out of him, right? It's going to be more about crafting items and casting rituals. So bear that in mind. Now let's see. We have this guy become Prophet for the extra combat capability. Now here's something neat I learned in Dominions 5 is you can recruit 3 of these guys a turn. I think I mentioned that earlier already, but it's kind of blew my mind because I forgot that was how commander points work. And in particular, you can do something like this and recruit 2 of them and 1 commander in a turn, right? So what I'm going to do actually is recruit this guy and 1 Wolfherd, right? My first turn, and I believe we can still pretty much max out recruitment of troops with these archers, huh? I'm not sure if it's the 100% best strategy. There, what if I just cancel that for now? Yeah, okay, fuck this guy. We're gonna get 3 Wolfherds. There we go. Alright, the reason I want to try and recruit Wolfherds really early on is because if you push hard enough, actually... Oh, damn, am I on a freaking island? Okay. Okay, random map creator. That's cool, too, I guess. Oh, boy. One thing I've definitely noticed is with the random map creator, it will screw you pretty hard sometimes in your starting spot. Much worse than any player-made map will ever do. So that might be, maybe I shouldn't use it so much because, man, it paints a grim picture of what your expansion is going to be like. But then again, I think playing with the starting map is going to be more and more common. Okay, so random maps is going to be more and more common because how to put it, it does generate more variety and balance in maps probably, but the balance is mostly that it's harder. Okay, so we're gonna go for Thaumaturgy 2. Now we got Thaumaturgy 1 in just a random roll of research paths, right? If you have the random research off or you didn't luck into it, you want 1 because you want Communion Master and Communion Slave. I already briefly explained this. I think I won't go into any more detail here, but maybe I'll make another video series on Communions later. But this is very essential to this nation in particular. And Mind Burn, right? So this affects 1 person, deals damage. And that's pretty much that, right? There's magic resistant negates. It's fairly cheap fatigue wise, and your members of the masters of the 2nd tier, I forget, members of the 2nd tier, member of the 2nd tier guys, they can cast it. And so it's something that you can get very early on as a research goal for a way for your mages to do something useful. Unfortunately, I think it gives your No. And even your weak one astral mages, right? You could have two of them become a communion slave, one become a communion master, and then have the master spam mind burn, right? So it gives you some sort of defense mechanism, and you're going to have, your mages exposed on provinces with no forts, so you're very likely to need that kind of defense. Now, if we look here, we've got Sanguine Heritage. Yeah, it was Blood 3 and Death 3. It requires 44 blood slaves, and it creates a vampire. So you want to cast this as soon as possible. The vampire counts are really good. And you want to ramp up your blood slave production until you can cast this like every single turn. Okay, so I believe they're Death 3 Blood 2 is what they get as natural passing. Or it could be even as low as Death 3 Blood 1, but they get a little of both of those. Okay, so I think we are ready to just move on and expand. I should probably queue up more research. So what else do I want to do for research early on? Eventually, in enchantment, we're not going to get to cast flaming arrows unless you give yourself a pretender that can cast flaming arrows. That's totally an option. You could go down to Blood 3, Death 3 on the Vampire Queen, go up to Fire 3, and then you'd be able to cast flaming arrows when combined with Conjuration. Definitely a viable strategy on this nation for going into the mid-game. But most importantly is Twiceborn at level 4 is handy for your pretender if you choose a non-immortal pretender or in some way combat badass pretender. And Horde of Skeletons. So this, your normal mages can't cast this, but your vampire counts can. And it's a very powerful spell. And it's a good thing to have them doing once you have as a useful spell for them to cast. When you first get them, you're probably just going to have them attack the enemy's back lines, and they're moderately elite units that always come back to life. So hey, could be better, could be worse. It's not having them actually fight in melee combat. It's not nearly as good as casting Horde of Skeletons. Horde of Skeletons will actually allow them to essentially thug. You can go into an enemy province and just cast Horde of Skeletons, and the vampire count should be able to cast it enough times to actually overwhelm and kill the province defense. So that's why it's so good. You also want to go up Evocation to Evocation 5 for Stellar Cascades. Most people rush this along with Conjuration 4 because then Stellar Cascades can be cast as long as you have Astral 2. It causes fatigue damage. Units pass out at 100 fatigue, and then they can be murdered by your regular troops. Or, in some cases, their fatigue can be pushed all the way to 200, and they start taking damage from increased fatigue. Light of the Northern Star increases the astral magic of all astral wizards on the battlefield by 1. So you have a communion, cast this, and then all of your little mages become more powerful, and they can cast Stellar Cascades. That's the strategy. So I'm going to research for that. That's probably what you're going to want to do, like Thalm 2, boom, go all the way up to Evocation 5, then Construction 2 or 4, and then Enchantment 5, right? And then for the late game, you start going with Blood Magic. You don't get any special blood stuff past level 1, and for a long, long time, you can just recruit more and more vampire counts, and it's probably the best strategy. But eventually, you'll want to go up it. Now, let's get into actual expansion. This is going to be rough. Like, saying that up front, like, it's not going to be pretty. Ulm has a hard time expanding and has no real good choices. Like, maybe there's something you could make work, but no good choices for expansion pretenders. Nothing I'm happy with, certainly. So they're going to have a little bit of a rough time, I think, in Dominions 5 expansion. More so than they had in the past, I believe. In the past, of course, they still had a little bit of a hard time compared to nations that could happily take expansion pretenders, I would say. But I think indies are more dangerous now than they were in the past. And as a result, you have a pretty rough time expanding as Ulm. Also, I think the random maps tend to be a little more dangerous. So, Lizard Warriors are very spooky to expand into. They give a bad attack and a regular attack, and I think each of their attacks does like 20 damage. So they're just going to slaughter the crap out of your troops. But light and heavy infantry, that's not that bad. Pretty easy. Heavy infantry and heavy cavalry, super bad, but not as bad as lizards, actually. Let's see here. So we probably want to recruit a fuckload of archers. Yeah, pretty much. We're going to be able to potentially expand with pure archer armies. I think next turn we'll recruit one commander of Ulm. With the changes to Wolf Herd, wolf herders. I think maybe you can use wolves as your front line and just have archers. In the past, you could actually expand with only archers a lot more easily. I would say 40 Rangers of Ulm could take out pretty much anything, like anything that's not like a super bad province to expand into, you could take out with them. Now that isn't really the case anymore, but you can potentially pad it out with the wolf herds. Okay, summon allies. And we're going to recruit a commander of Ulm and a few extra archers. Cool. I think I actually missed out on recruiting one more archer last turn. Whoops. And soon we want to recruit a mage, but not quite yet. You're going to be looking... This is a really bad spawn, actually, compared to what I got last time I test played them. Let's see. So this, we actually still succeeded. We lost 16 units, so we're not going to be able to expand any farther, probably. Yeah. So I'm actually going to have him come back, and I'm not going to bother getting a new commander. Oh, I did already bother getting a new commander. What am I saying? But we're going to go back to recruiting a ton of those, and now we've got a buttload of resources. Excellent. We're just going to recruit even more archers. Cool. This should be nice, and let's see. And more wolves. Nice. For a trolled province, it's not really any good reason to do that. I actually just do it because then it doesn't give me the warning you haven't given orders to all your units thing, and I like to hit J to cycle through all my commanders, and I usually don't end the turn until I see nothing. Okay, so let's see, everything's ticking along nicely, and the turn. So yeah, I think if you're lucky, you could definitely have better expansion than this. I suspect on a player-made map, like an actual created from scratch map, like Pelawir, or I think Pelawir is what the game comes with now, right? Like Pelawir, and you would have a much easier time, I think, if you're playing that. So, all right, I've got straight up 80 archers. This is pretty good. I'm gonna have him go this way. Yeah, seems good. Well, oh, I think we can actually take these guys. Sample lizard warriors. Okay. Do we have enough money? Yeah, we do. We're gonna recruit a member of the second tier now. Neat. Okay, all right. All right, not bad. There were actually a lot less than I thought. I was kind of expecting it to be a low approximation and get hit with like 50 of those guys. So unfortunately, none of these provinces have this province that's here. So you want like 8,000 plus units or population to blood hunt a province. And so I really don't want to put a lab on any of these provinces here that are like around our capital, which is pretty unfortunate because like this, I want to have a province that I can be comfortable or happy about putting a lab on near my capital, but I don't. So kind of sucks. Kind of sucks, not gonna lie. However, I think that we will soon be able to fix that situation. That's pretty good. We're gonna recruit another one of these guys. So we're gonna roll out with like a shitload of units and take out this province. Okay. You probably want to know why that is. So, blood hunting is not fully effective unless you have enough population. I think like the bottom end is like 6,000. But of course it damages the population as well. So you want to have a high population so that the growth from growth actually does counteract your blood hunting. I don't know if 8,000 is the actual break-even point, but it's usually like in my mind that's what I'm looking for is provinces with 8,000 population or more. Ideally 10,000, because I know 10,000 is plenty to counteract the effects of blood hunting as long as you're not doing it super heavily. So in that sense, I'd like to have 10,000 provinces with only with 10,000 population. Strictly speaking, you can of course, blood hunt wherever you want, but it's going to be not very effective in provinces that have less than 8,000 or 6,000 population. You also, actually, I guess it doesn't really matter. I was going to say you also want provinces with more recruitment points, but since you don't really have like recruit off-cap troops that you care about besides your mages, all you care about is the command points, and so it doesn't matter, really. Okay. So we're going to send these guys out. We're going to send this guy out too because he's going to just come over here and build a temple, or lab. All right. All right, and we probably, no, we actually totally do want another guy. Okay. I could mix in some melee troops to my recruitment as well, expansion recruitment. I'm not 100% sure if it's worth it. Last time I did, but this time I've got a lot more wolf herders a lot earlier. Oh, and I forgot to make them start summoning allies. Don't make that mistake, because that's pretty kind of waste them, like having them. It's kind of a waste to not have them and not use them. I mean, it's absolutely a waste. It's very literally absolutely a waste. Okay, so I'm gonna recruit one more commander and try and roll out another army of like 40 or 80 wolves and like 80 crossbowmen. That's my goal in life right now. So I realized I went cold, and this is actually a huge mistake, I think. Yeah, so the snowed over provinces weren't really a thing that mattered in Dominions 4. I don't think they were a thing at all, but they are a thing now. And if your troops don't have snow movement, it's going to slow down their movement. So I've basically screwed myself. Forgot about this. I've totally screwed myself, because now I'm not going to be able to move quickly no matter what, because I don't have the snow travel bullshit. But I do have forest survival. So in another, if I was using ranger captains to lead the rangers around, they actually have great mobility, as long as I don't have to cross like swamps or snow, right? So like I could easily move from here to all the way to over here, from here to here, and then from here to there, and then over to here. But then once I'm over here, I think I can move 3 provinces, right? I can move like up to, it's a forest mountain, so maybe I couldn't move across it, but you know, like if you're over here, you can go boom, 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 right? It's a lot of movement, but I'm gonna stop myself from doing that in my own territory with snow. So that was a mistake, I would say. Well, since I do have the option. Okay, so I don't have enough troops yet to do anything with that. All right, we're gonna enter. Also notice my mage is not actually participating in the combat here. He snuck into the province because he's a spy, which I did want, because, you know, you never know when you're going to get killed by like a random arrow or some really bad luck with the battle somehow. Like, look, one of my captains died there. So this is gonna be rough. These guys are gonna be really shit versus ghouls and soulless, because the soulless are going to be piercing resistant. So oops, or not oops, but ouch. Ouch is the correct terminology. Oh, this guy just retreated, huh? Okay. Well, that's fine. We'll have him go back here. We'll stop recruiting these guys. Recruit more wolf herds. Let's make all of our wolf herds. So then we'll have, all right, have them all summon allies. We're not going to compete in the arena deathmatch. If I had a vampire count already, I'd probably do it, but I don't have any units that are going to be good for that. Whoa, did I stop recruiting archers? Oops, how did I do that? Was I out of money? I probably was out of money and didn't notice. That's okay, I can just do that. This is probably fine. Let's have him move out. And have him move out. Okay, so in turn. Very nice, very nice. Had a very easy time with it. Okay, cool. So we've got our laboratory. We're gonna start recruiting our illuminated. What was that? We're gonna start recruiting our illuminated ones, and we only get one of them every other turn, but that's fine, honestly. It just means we need more labs. And this guy is gonna start blood hunting because we've got 11,000 population now. This is one of the reasons why we absolutely must have order scales. Let's see. Let me cancel some of my unit recruitment. I'm just running out of money. For one, we need more money. For another, so this reduces unrest by 1 per month. Our order scales are going to make that an additional -3 per month because we have 3 order. So we really need that because, for one, you start with unrest, but you also are going to generate more unrest with blood hunting. The more blood hunting you do and the more successful it is, the more unrest you generate. So we can't basically just let that lie because it's going to absolutely shit all over your income. And the best provinces to blood hunt are the ones that give you the most income as well. So you got to do something about it. You got to do something about it. And you're going to have to... I also forgot about these guys a bit. Whoops. Oh, no, these are just the 3 I just got, right? Okay, cool. We've got enough dudes there. Now we're going to recruit another member of the 2nd tier. And a Wolford. All right, cool. So, what was I saying? I was talking about something. Oh man, maybe I'm too tired today to do this properly. My apologize. My apologize? Yeah, I'm definitely too tired. My apologies if this video is less energetic than usual. I hope it's still decent, gives you a decent idea of how to play the nation, but I guess I'm a bit asleep today, apparently. I didn't feel very asleep, but I'm making like a lot of small errors, and I'm just noticing it, but I can't stop myself. All right, let's see. This is pretty good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a lab over here, right? That's my goal. And then looking at these provinces, I don't have a lot of other good options for high whatchamacallit population. This area over here with the Hoburgs, right? So Hoburgs are kind of a useful indie recruit anyway, and this is farmland. Farmland usually has high population, so I really want to get this farmland and get control of it. So I can put a lab there as well, and I think that's about it. I think I also want to put a lab here, so I'm gonna have a lab here, 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 and here. And the goal basically is to get your blood economy going. So I've got this guy blood hunting. I'm recruiting another dude so that I can send him over there, build a lab, and start blood hunting. You don't have to build a lab to start blood hunting. Early age Mictlan, for example, well, that sucks, would start blood hunting with, oh, did my commander die? Guess he did. Without labs, and they would use indie scouts to move their blood slaves around, right? You can transfer them between units when you get them and move them around. Now, I am not doing that because I kind of have the luxury of needing to build labs on the same provinces that would be good for blood hunting, right? So, did I order this guy out the wrong way? Jeez, I did. I totally did. Okay. So, let's see. This guy is going to summon allies. This guy's going to go... It's going to start sneaking over there. And this guy... I think I actually lost track of this guy in like the pile of units that I have here. Yeah, whoops, that's why. All right, so this isn't. There we go. He can just hang out here while we get more dudes for him. Do we want another? Yeah, we want to produce another member of the second tier. We've actually got enough wolf herds. Good, captured blood slaves, that I might want to stop recruiting them because I've got too many, right? I have too many of them, and what I mean by that is that they're sucking up a lot of my income by having a high upkeep. So I don't necessarily want a ton more. Now, normally, in the past, getting to that point, this is early spring year 1, so we've basically finished expansion. This is unusually shit because there's one choke point right here, so we've gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 provinces. I would expect to get more like 12 provinces as late age Ulm if you're not getting like totally screwed over. This isn't totally different from how they were in Dominions 4. Like, you're just kind of boned because you can't have a good expansion pretender, and you can expand well with your starting units, but you just can't produce enough of them. You don't have some like uber elite unit you only need 10 of per turn to expand with, you know. So you're not going to get great expansion no matter what. Ulm is kind of a nation that can make a lot out of a small amount of territory though, so that part benefits you. And eventually, if you have a good enough economy anyway, you're going to start building labs in other provinces, right? Besides, all right, so we're going to cut this way down. And we're going to recruit a couple of these guys because we need a couple anyway. And yeah, that should be good. Okay, so you're gonna build labs eventually on like all your provinces and start recruiting at least your smaller mages, right, from every lab. But it's going to take you a good bit of income to do that, so it might be a little bit. Now, probably what I would do, I'm probably going to stop the video soon and call it good. But what I would do in general here is, like, this guy, he looks like Jotunheim, late age, looks like a good, actually he's Utgard now, right? Yeah, Utgard is probably a good target for me to attack. So I'd probably like expand out here and like build a fort maybe right here, have a lab right here, and then expand out this way a little bit more and start fighting this guy. So we're gonna blood hunt now that we've built a, wait, we haven't built a lab, that's right. We're gonna build a lab and then we're gonna start blood hunting and we're gonna start recruiting mages. This is also a good candidate for blood hunting and lab building as well. It's just a low priority, right? Because it doesn't have it's not a great position for it. It's just okay. So this is a lot of wolves. We probably don't want that many wolves. I'd probably want first as many archers as possible, then some wolves. And see, the thing is, like, this is actually like not a bad early army because, okay, it's a terrible early army, but the point is that, like, we've got 80 wolves. This isn't even all of our wolves from while I've been like not like the last like 2 turns. We're producing like 80 wolves every 2 turns or something. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good. We back it up with like 100 archers, and that's like a decent attack force. And what you might do is then you might put like these guys really like bog things down because they've got their big shields. So you might put like a bunch of these guys behind your wolves, and then have like a fuckload of archers, and that's how you would roll if you're fighting players, right? Or NPCs, either way. I think actually I was moving both of these guys over there, but what if we just let's make a little side route and take that out, shall we? Yeah, sounds good. So we're building our lab there, we're attacking over there, and turn. Okay. So it's a very slow expansion, and you're gonna have a hard time playing this nation versus very aggressive players. Like, it's a very tough province defense. Got attacked by those guys. That's very annoying. Where's that? It's a very tough nation. Like, how to put it? Tough as in durable, as in the nation is very hard to kill because later on, because you start getting vampire counts, right? And they're immortal, and you can basically just harass people's armies with them. And the better your research gets, and your research is going to be quite good, the better you are going to be at harassing people with vampire counts, right? Oh, this is pretty. Oh, Dominion spreads death. Or gets death. So this is not something we're going to use. We need the growth. But yeah, so with your vampire counts, okay, so this has been a pretty rough expansion. We only have 11 blood slaves so far. That's unfortunate. So what I might do here is, and this is like mostly pretty bad, but I would start blood hunting my capital to try and get that first count, right? Your first vampire count, very handy mage to have around, and it kind of frees up your pretender from having to summon vampire counts in the future, or it will fit once you can empower him. So I'd probably have them blood hunt my capital and patrol it, and that kills some of your capital population, generates unrest, reduces your income quite a bit potentially. So I wouldn't do it for very long. Maybe get my first vampire count and stop. But yeah, it's probably worth doing. I would send, let's see, send one of these guys, sneak them out here. I'm gonna go build a lab there, and yeah, that's pretty much the strategy, I think. I don't know if there's anything else I really want to go over. Your strategy is going to be to expand out, right, and lock down your territory by building labs, right, and you're gonna have like a couple of these guys that you're gonna want to recruit at each lab, and then a bunch of these guys. You're going to go up the research tree like I've been doing slowly so far, but it's going to pick up speed very quickly as you get more labs up and running. And you might recruit more members of the second tier to get faster research if you have spare money, which I do right now, and you probably will also. You're going to use these wolves as fodder, right? And you have them just go into the enemy army and like fatigue them out over time, and you put your units behind them and basically pepper them with crossbow bolts. And that's how you win in the early mid game. Basically just crossbow bolt them down. Maybe you bring some of these guys along and you cast mind burn a bunch. Once you have your vampire counts, which you should have at least one before year 2, and maybe I'll have 2 if you have a better expansion than I did. I could definitely see that happening in some games. Maybe you could do some trade with other nations if you're playing with players to get more blood slaves. Most people won't want to give you blood slaves because they know how good it is for you, but you know, someone might be amenable to the idea. And you can get 1 or 2 vampire counts out, and so then you're going to have an army where you can bring your vampire counts along. Maybe you can bring your pretender along, right? And you might be able to do something somewhat useful with that, especially once you get a little bit of... well, I guess none of these are really going to help you out early on. Mostly just the thaumaturgy will give you mind burn, which is pretty nice. And I guess with the vampire counts and these guys, you can just attack the back lines of the enemy units, right? So, I mean, your vampire counts are going to similarly be very durable. They're going to have regeneration. They're going to be able to drain people's life, and they're just going to kill a couple units in the back line. And the really nice thing is that you might kill a couple mages if you're lucky, or an enemy commander, which could cause enemy units to rout, or just generally severely deplete their combat effectiveness if you kill a mage. And that's what you do. You ramp it up, right? You ramp it up. Eventually, you're going to take a ton of your members of the second tier and a ton of your illuminated ones, these guys, and you're going to go and cast Lights of the Northern Star, and you'll have a communion of mages, right? And let me do something really quick here. So how you set up a communion is that you have one guy cast Communion Master, and then you cast whatever spells you want to cast, like Horror Mark, right? And you have other guys cast Communion Slave, right? Now, how it works if you have two Communion Masters is that there's only one Communion in the battlefield, right? And so each Communion Master is going to affect all of your Communion Slaves. You have to be very careful. If you have like 4 Communion Slaves and like 3 Masters, you're going to kill the people who are acting as Communion Slaves really quickly. How that works is that the Communion Slaves can't cast any spells of their own. They just kind of sit there. And when the Communion Masters cast spells, it fatigues the Communion Mages, right? So once they pass 200 fatigue, they start taking fatigue. Every 10 fatigue is 1 damage, I believe, and they're going to die pretty fast. So just keep that in mind when you're building Communions. But basically, you have one of these guys. You have some... Sorry, let me slow myself down for a second here. You can potentially have just 2 Communion Slaves and 1 Communion Master, like this guy. And you could have them set up just like this. And then instead of Horror Mark, he would have, with these 2 guys, Astral 3, so he could cast Light of the Northern Star. And then you're going to have the rest of the battlefield filled with like 10 more of these guys. Now, they're all going to have Astral 2 now. Well, if you've hit Evocation 5, you're going to be able to cast Stellar Cascades, which is a fairly wide AoE for 25 fatigue damage, right, to enemy units. And the enemy units are going to be getting pelted with this, right, every couple turns. And meanwhile, they're fighting into a horde of like 200 wolves, and you've got like another 100, 200 crossbows behind the wolves. And basically the idea is that even though the wolves are very crappy units, enemies have to attack them and become more fatigued by fighting them, right? And you're fatiguing them out on purpose at the same time. Now, the wolves aren't going to fatigue out as fast as the enemy troops. And in particular, they're actually going to just get killed, and then new fresh wolves that haven't been fighting will replace them. And you should outnumber the enemy army by quite a bit, at least versus nations that don't have cheap chaff like Lady Jolm has. And so, all the while, they're also getting peppered with crossbow bolts. And so eventually, you wear them down, and the units start fatiguing out. They start passing 50 fatigue, and at that point, wolves become very dangerous to them, even though they're such shitty units. Like, let's look at their stat block really quick here, right? I mean, they bite for 11 damage. Most units are going to have enough armor that this is going to do nothing to them, right? They only have 8 hit points, only 10 defense, only 2 protection. They die so easily, but they still take at least 1 attack to kill, right? Or at least 1 spell. So this is going to wear down enemy troops. It's going to wear down enemy mages. I mean, I've got 124 of these guys here. You get so many per turn. If you focus on it, you can build up. 3 per turn is so many wolf herds. It's super good. And then you just fill your backlines with archers. And you have another wave of actually good infantry waiting behind the wolves, right? Because the wolves cost you almost nothing. So that's what you're going to do. You're going to be super cancerous. And as you roll into the late game, what you do is you get bigger communions. You start crafting magical items. Like I can't show it in game easily, but there are these like crystal hearts that basically allow mages that are not astral mages to get into communions. So what you do is like you'd have a guy like this, and you implant him with a crystal heart, and now he's automatically a communion master. And so you would have some other communion people as communion slaves, and you could use this guy to cast big earth spells and big fire spells, right? Similarly, with your pretender or with one of your vampire counts, you could use blood magic to cast Sabbath Master, which is the same thing as communion master, but it costs a blood slave and puts you at negative 100 fatigue, right? So you'd also have to cast but then you can cast Reinvigoration, which communion slaves share all buffs that the communion master gets during the communion. So if you cast Reinvigoration, it cleanses all the fatigue off your slaves as well. So you can do some handy things with that, and then you can use it to cast really powerful death spells. And so you can kind of like, work your way to different powerful spells through communion gymnastics, right? And that's what you do for the mid and end game. And so eventually you're going to get stuff like you're going to get Thaumaturgy 2, and you're going to get like your Enchantment 5, and your Evocation 5, your Conjuration 4, and then you're going to get your Blood Magic up, and your Construction up, and then you're going to get your Evocation or Enchantment or Thaumaturgy even higher, and reach like even bigger goals. Then you can actually get quite a lot of flexibility through abusing these communion shenanigans that you can do, especially since you get your fortune tellers, right? And so that gets you communions with nature magic as well. So you can cast big nature spells, big death spells, big blood spells, big astral spells, big earth spells, and big fire spells when you really push it to the max, right? So it gives you a lot of flexibility. You just have to work for it pretty hard. And then you have your immortal units, and you just kind of you harass people to death. Like, this nation's really good at that. You've got wolves are stealthy, your crossbowmen are stealthy, your vampires are stealthy, your wolves aren't deathless, but you can just spawn endless waves of them from your capital and all your wolf herds. Your vampires respawn, and you can just keep harassing people with those. And your whole theme is just kind of the war of attrition master, right? That's what your nation's really good at, and it's really good at turtling and being hard to kill once it gets going. So, especially, yeah, no, that I think that pretty much sums it up. I hope you enjoy this nation. This is actually one of my favorite nations, and I think they're not quite as overpowered as they were in Dominions 4, because their research in Dominions 4 was extremely fast. You'd call it it was the turbo mode of all national research. And Dominions 4 with the foreign recruit mages taking 2 turns, or Dominions 5 with the foreign recruit mages taking 2 turns, it just can't be as fast as it could in the past, but it's still good. So, and with the changes to cap only recruitment and wolf herds, I think it's actually pretty positive. One other thing I should note is that you'll notice I don't have a very wide area of Dominion control, and I actually need to take this guy and a couple other Inquisitors out and have them go and like preach over here and over here and over here and spread my Dominion out, because I took Dominion 4, right? But I can get away with it, and you should be able to pretty easily too. I took Dominion 5 actually. I guess the NPCs took very high Dominion, but you can get away with it because that'll make him count as a priest 4 for preaching against enemy Dominion. And it's very effective. You shouldn't have too hard of a time. You can always build an extra temple or 2 if you really need to. Okay, thank you all for watching. Let me know what videos you'd like to see in the future. I'll be working on some more national videos since I've got a pretty long queue of requests for nations to review, and hopefully you'll be seeing those soon. Yakri out.